Let's wind back the clock. It's Giratina Malamar. Welcome back, everyone, to more from the Sableyes. I'm Mitch, and today we're going to be taking a look at an old favourite. It is Giratina Malamar. That's the spell tag version, one that saw quite a lot of play in the last format, and one that could also be quite strong in this format as well. Obviously, the HP of some Pokemon cards are getting quite high, but the recyclable nature of Giratina means that 130 damage along with Malamar to recycle energy is very, very strong. If you can get the thing set up, then you'll probably be able to take a lot of knockouts pretty quickly. Without any more chat, let's take a look at the list and see how it goes. So here it is. This is the Malamar Giratina list that we've been testing. It's also one that managed to do quite well in Melbourne. Obviously, Giratina Malamar, quite a consistent deck already, but it is one that is worth taking a look at every now and then. Obviously, we're going to be building around the fact that we've got Psychic Recharge on Malamar. We've got a 4/4 line of Malamar that we're going to use to power up a bunch of one-prize attackers, specifically Giratina. With Distortion Door, it means that we can recycle it as an attacker, put 10 damage onto 2 Pokemon on our opponent's bench, bring it back from the discard pile, power it up with Malamar, and start attacking again. 130 for 3 is probably the most efficient one prize attack we've got in the game, especially since we can recycle pretty much everything on it. And when you've got something like a spell tag on that as well, you can potentially do quite a lot of placeable damage with Giratina. The rest of the deck is support for that particular setup. We've got a Jirachi engine in this deck for Jirachi, as well as 2 copies of Escape Board to get in and out of the active. We want to use that to find things like our 4 Mysterious Treasure or our 4 Quick Ball in order to set up Malamars as quickly as possible. Mysterious Treasure obviously finds everything in the deck apart from Jirachi, and it means that we can get consistently as many Malamar in play as we need. We also have a few one-of attackers in the deck in order to make sure that we've got all of our options covered. Apart from Giratina, we have 1 copy of Latios-GX in the deck for Clear Vision to stop things like ADP-zation from using its GX attack to take multiple prizes. If they do that, we're going to struggle to beat them, so Clear Vision will stop that. And Tag Perch can also potentially lock out Pokemon like Mewtwo and Mew and Pikachu Zekrom from attacking, so that's always a good option. We also have 1 copy of Mew. Bench Barrier is very important in this deck. We don't want Malamars getting sniped, but Psi Power is also a really strong attack. When we put something like a spell tag onto this Mew, we're potentially placing 7 damage counters instead of just 3, so that's very strong. And then you take a look at something like Blacephalon with Fireworks Bomb. Instead of 1 energy, it's 2, but instead of placing 3 damage counters, it's 4. Pretty good, right? But I mean, when we've got 3 prizes on our opponent's side of the board remaining, we can do 12 damage counters instead. So we can set up some really big plays with Blacephalon if we do get ourselves into that position. We also have Espurr in this list, specifically for Ear Kinesis. It means that we can do 20 damage times the number of damage counters on our opponent's benched Pokemon. So for example, if an ADP has 5 damage counters on it already, we can attack for 100 with Ear Kinesis. If we've got lots of damage counters on from placing things like Psi Powers or Baby Blacephalon, even utilizing those spell tags, we can push that number up quite high, and once you get to 8 or 9 damage counters on a Pokemon, you're going to be able to knock it out quite quickly. So Espurr is a good option there. We also have Mimikyu for Copycat. It's a 2 energy attack, which allows us to copy anything that our opponent used last turn, apart from a GX attack. You think about it, Reshizard is still big. If they use Flare Strike, 230 damage, Mimikyu's going to be able to come in and do the same thing for 2 energy. So that's a pretty solid effort. And then, in this deck, 1 card that we haven't seen in this deck before is Solgaleo and Lunala Tag Team GX. It's in the list specifically for Cosmic Burn. 230 damage is a strong number to be able to hit, and when lots of Pokemon are relying on having a large base HP, being able to do 230 damage as well as the extra snipe that you've been doing can potentially get you a one-shot to win the game. That means that an ADP with 280 HP only needs 50 damage counters on it for a one-shot to be potentially on the cards. So Solgaleo and Lunala really strong. We can also use the GX attack for 200, but obviously the effect utilizing Lily's full force is not going to be there. We don't play that particular card in this list. The rest of the deck, the items and trainers is fairly consistent. I've already mentioned our ball search. We've got Treasure and Quick Ball. We also have Acrobike, 3 copies to help move through our deck quite quickly. We've got 1 copy of Great Catcher in order to gust up that one time we need to, and 1 copy of Lana's Fishing Rod as well. This is really strong in comparison to Ordinary Rod because we can put a tool back into the deck which allows us to get those spell tags that we've got, or even an escape board, back into the deck for later on. Means that the spell tags we can continue to attach to things like Giratina to get even more value out of them. We're on 3 Switch in this list. We're not as reliant on Switch as other decks are. We do have Jirachis with escape boards, but Switch obviously can be important, so we have a few copies of that, as well as 2 copies of Viridian Forest to help us find energy as consistently as possible. Our supporter line, super simple, 4 copies of Professor's Research to discard and draw 7, and 4 copies of Cynthia to shuffle, draw 6, and give ourselves the 2 best draw supporters in the game because we need to find as many cards as possible every turn. Doing so with the best draw supporters is probably not a bad idea. So it's as simple as that. The list is designed to work as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So we'll take a look on the ladder and see if we can get it to work out. Our ladder match today, I think, is going to be a mirror. We've got similar colours here, so we'll wait and see. It looks like our opponent has elected to go first. We've got an okay start here in Giratina being our active Pokemon. We've got switches so we can move it out of the active. If we find a Jirachi, we'll be really happy. But yeah, it looks like our opponent's starting Giratina as well. So this will be a really interesting mirror match. Giratina mirror matches in the past have been about who is able to be successful quickly. And looks like our opponent, they're only attaching and passing, means that they're in a bit of strife here. Acrobike finding us Professor's Research, which is pretty strong. We're going to be able to play down a Viridian Forest. We might even play this Mysterious Treasure now, discard something from this hand. We're going to get rid of most of it anyway because of that Sycamore. Oh, sorry, that Juniper. No, not Juniper. Oh, I've said them all. Magnolia. And we're looking through here. We're probably going to grab an Inkay with this one. We want to set up Inkays as quickly as we can, but we're going to make sure that we've got all of the attackers that we need. We'll switch into the Inkay and then get going. Got a couple of Inkay here. Probably don't need to play all 3 of them down. I'm just thinking of a think about it here, but if we are in the mirror, then it's probably not a bad idea. We also have a Quick Ball here, so we can use Viridian Forest, find another energy, discard that one. We've got 2 in the bin. I can Quick Ball, get rid of a Mysterious Treasure. Probably not the best discard here. Probably could have gotten rid of the spell tag instead. I'll attach to the Inkay and then retreat into Jirachi. Our opponent unlikely to be able to attack next turn. We can grab ourselves a Cynthia, as well as utilize Stellar Wish again next turn. So hopefully we're going to have all that we need to get going. We've got 1 Malamar guaranteed. Hopefully we've got an attachment pretty much guaranteed. We've got an extra supporter, so we should be good to go here. Our opponent is playing Roller Skater and Ordino, so these are cards that we're not necessarily expecting to see out of a Malamar deck, but it's not inherently bad. Ordino, a perfectly acceptable budget option if you don't have the capacity to get Jirachis, so fair enough. And Roller Skater isn't actually that bad in this list. Being able to discard an energy and draw cards is pretty good. So we've got the Inkay coming down, we've got a spell tag going onto our opponent's Giratina, and a Quick Ball coming out here, so that'll probably grab themselves another Inkay. We're looking at maybe a second or a third turn of attacking from our opponent here. They haven't quite got themselves going as well as they would have liked. Utilizing the Viridian Forest here, so it's going to be a very interesting back and forth. They do have something that we don't, that's 2 energy on a Giratina. That's really unfortunate. Getting the Mysterious Treasure here is really unlucky. What we can do is we can get rid of the spell tag here, or even the Mysterious Treasure to find the Malamar. It's not ideal. Kind of want to hold on to this spell tag, but probably didn't have to there. We will put it on the Giratina and then Cynthia. Hopefully we can find another Malamar. And in that instance, no, we can't. But we do at least find the Mew, so we could potentially get ourselves some damage off this turn. We do need to find the switch, though, from Jirachi. So we'll try and use that Stellar Wish now. Hopefully we can find one, and we do find the switch, which is good. Considering grabbing the Cynthia there because we don't have a supporter in hand, but it is important that we get ourselves going. We've got a Spell Tag, we've got a Mew, and we've got a Psychic Energy. So what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to put this Mew into the active. We're going to recharge an energy onto our Giratina so that next turn it's a little easier to power up. And then we can start sniping some damage with Psy Power, which is a really, really strong option. We can put 30 damage onto an Inkay, and then if our opponent doesn't deal with that by evolving it, then we'll be able to take a knockout next turn. So I'm feeling reasonably strong. Obviously, if they do get their Giratina attacking, then we're going to be able to place 4 damage counters with our own spell tag. So feeling okay. Viridian Forest here grabbing another energy for our opponent. They could potentially attach that to the Giratina, or even if they've got a supporter, attach it to the Ordino and then try and find a Malamar, which is what they're going to do here. They'll Cynthia into a fresh 6 cards and then evolve. So looks like they're going to be taking a knockout on our Mew this turn. It's just a matter of now, where do we place our spell tag damage? We're going to want to make sure that we've got as many resources as possible, as much flexibility as possible to be able to take knockouts on these benched Malamars. If we can do that, then we're going to be in a good position. So our opponent here grabbing another Malamar, they're going to be able to play that down on their second Inkay and give their Ordino that energy to retreat. So even if they do find themselves in a position where Giratina gets knocked out next turn, which is possible, they will have a pivot in Ordino. Looks like they've got a quick ball here as well. They can potentially find another Inkay so that they can set up their third Malamar and keep that cycle going. So that's 3 Inkay each now. And the Shadow Impact comes down onto this Mew, so it's just a matter now of where do we place this spell tag damage. We'll wait and see where they put their damage on themselves. 40 onto the active, we'll place that 40 onto the Malamar. 70 damage there means that we've got a little bit more flexibility. We'll put the Jirachi forward here, and hopefully we can find something decent off of the Stellar Wish. So I think we're going to be utilising Viridian Forest. We know our opponent's playing Viridian, so we can get rid of our own and just grab another energy here. It's more about discarding and thinning the deck. Looks like we've got an Escape Board there. Really tempting to grab the Juniper, but we get the Escape Board. It's guaranteed. Means that we can pivot from our Jirachis into the future. So we're going to do that. We'll attach that energy to the Giratina and then retreat into it. Now we're going to take some of that spell tag damage from our opponent's Giratina, but that's okay. We have a bit of flexibility and we're not in front, which is normally a good thing. In these kind of matchups, you don't want to find yourself in a position where you're behind, because then you can be kind of maneuvered into an awkward spot. And that Malamar off of the prizes is really, really strong. So our opponent unlikely to be able to take a knockout on our Jirachi next turn. They could potentially if they've got the Mew. Looks like they've got the Giratina ready to do their Distortion Doors. Best case scenario for us, they attack into us and we get to utilize our spell tag, which I think is going to be the best case scenario for us. When it comes to that, if we're able to put our spell tag damage in a good position, we can not necessarily take a knockout on a Malamar this turn. We don't necessarily need to, but we can spread that damage out so that when our opponent eventually goes down to 3 prize cards remaining, we'll be in a position where we can win the game by spreading some damage onto some Malamars and knocking their energy acceleration out before they can get any other attackers in play. So we're in a good spot. Psychic Recharge coming down onto that Ordino, which is a bit disappointing. They're going to be able to continue to have their pivot. And then the Shadow Impact. The important thing is they don't have a spell tag. So we'll be able to place 40 damage. They're putting 40 onto their Giratina. We'll probably put 10 onto a Malamar. Actually, we'll put 40 onto the second Malamar there. We could have put 10 onto the benched one, but it's kind of always awkward when you're placing spell tag damage on this particular game. Oh, and there we go. Another Malamar off of the top here. So we're going to be able to get ourselves another Giratina no matter what. This spell tag here could be quite important. We probably don't need this Mimikyu. We don't want to use Shadow Impact. It's not necessarily great. We get the research here, which is really good. It means that we're going to be able to shuffle in a spell tag and a Mew with the Lana's Fishing Rod. We'll be able to attach an energy to our Giratina on the bench, and then we'll be good to go. So there's a Mew and the spell tag going back into the deck. We'll be able to use Distortion Door on our Giratina. Bring that back into the field of play. We'll put 10 damage onto both of the damaged Malamar. and that will put one within 10 and another within 40. We'll attach, and then Professor's Research. And if we can get into a Mew and a spell tag here, that'll probably be the best possible play. Look at that, we've got them. So Mew and spell tag means that we can potentially recycle into another Psi Power here and really put some pressure on. We'll Psychic Recharge a couple of times onto our Giratina, just because we want to have a powered attacker. We can always put it into the active to retreat those energies if we need to. And then we've got the Mew to come down. Psychic Recharge onto that, and a Spell Tag will do the job nicely. We'll retreat, and then we're ready to place some damage. Now, there's an argument we could take a knockout on the Malamar on the bench, but we probably don't have to. I think it's better to just place all 3 of these damage counters onto the Malamar with 50 damage already on it. That just means that we're within range of a potential D-door onto those 2 Malamar, which leaves us open for an even bigger knockout with Blacephalon next turn. Best case for us, since our opponent only has 3 cards, is they have to take a knockout with Giratina. They place 40 damage counters down. We can then start spreading stuff if we find ourselves a Blacephalon. If not, then we're going to be in a little bit of an awkward spot. I've got a Professor's Research here, so not only will they be able to draw 7 fresh cards, they'll also get an extra one with Ordino, so they could potentially be looking at a bit of spread damage here themselves. And the key thing is they're not attacking with their own Shadow Impact, which would put a whole bunch of damage counters on their side of the board that they don't want to have to deal with. So it'll be interesting to see what our opponents end up doing here, utilizing Hearing from Ordino to try and grab themselves an extra card. And it's looking pretty awkward. We don't really want our opponent to start utilizing a Mew of their own. If they get Mew Energy Spell Tag, that's actually really bad for us, because it means that not only are they going to be able to start putting pressure on our Mew in the active, they'll be able to knock it out without triggering the spell tag, which we don't want them to do. So hopefully we'll be able to get an attack off on something and get going here. Another thing that they might also look to do is take a knockout on our Jirachi. Jirachi on the bench has 20 HP left, which could be very precarious. The last thing we want is for that to get knocked out, because we lose our pivot, especially the Escape Board. It looks like they're playing down their own baby Blacephalon here, which is actually really big for us. It means that we might be able to get a knockout on it before they can knock out anything else. So that's really, really strong. They can put their baby Blacephalon into the active here. They're going to recharge again to that Ordino, and then they'll be utilizing Fireworks Bomb. But where do they place those damage counters? I'm not sure. Looks like, yes, 2 are going down onto that Jirachi, so they'll go down to 3 prizes, and then Malamar has 30 HP. We've got an Acrobite, so we've got to try and hit the Blacephalon here. We'll try and thin with Viridian. There's no energy left, but it's okay. I'll have a look through. We do have a lot of access to it. We've got supporters, quick balls, and the Pokemon, and there it is. So we've got it off of the top here. So we'll grab the Blacephalon, place that down, and we've got a couple of energy in the discard. There's 3 left, so we'll be able to pop a spell tag on there, Psychic Recharge twice, and now we are in a really strong spot, because not only are we going to be able to put a huge amount of damage on our opponent's board, 120 is going to take a knockout on effectively every one of their Malamars here, but we're also going to be in a position where our opponent's only way to respond to this is to attack with Shadow Impact, which will place 40 damage due to Shadow Impact, and then also because of the spell tag. So 2 knockouts on those Malamars, and then we'll click a bunch of times. We've got 90 damage going onto that Malamar there. 10 damage probably goes to the Giratina just to make it a little bit easier to knock out down the line. 3 prizes to us. All of their Malamars are gone, and they are no longer on their Blacephalon turn. So we are in a really good spot to go on to win this game. We've got spell tags on our active. We've still got Mew and Blacephalon. If they choose not to take a knockout on this Blacephalon, then we can just keep spreading damage. If they do take a knockout, then we're probably going to be in a position where 40 plus 30 will take a knockout on a Giratina, or we could just utilize our own Giratina to take a knockout on their Blacephalon if they choose to spread that way. So yeah, we're in a really, really good spot here. I feel like there's not a huge amount that our opponent can realistically do. They've got a big hand, but they've got no options. They can't utilize any of their specialty cards here. Reset Stamp will put us down to 2, but we're fine. We've got all the things that we need in play already. That Cynthia isn't going to be a big deal for us. We're not looking for anything here. The key is that we just need to make sure that we get an attack off next turn. Our opponent grabbing out another Inkay, so they are going to need to take a knockout on this Blacephalon, which means that we're going to be able to place damage counters and get ourselves moving. They've got an Necrozma here and a Mew, and the Cynthia comes out, so I'm feeling like we're in a strong spot. They take a knockout, we're going to be able to place damage counters. They've got a spell tag here, which is quite frustrating, but to retreat, they need to remove all of their energy from the board. So this Shadow Impact, they'll get a prize on our Blacephalon, but we'll be able to take a knockout in response, and I don't think there's a huge amount that our opponent can do about that. So really, really strong position. They're going to place 40 on the Blacephalon. We might actually just put all 4 of these onto the Inkay and then potentially promote Mew and start spreading some of that damage around. We could take a knockout on their Inkay as well. So I'm just having a think here about where the best place is to go. It will be on that Inkay. So we'll put 40 damage on that and then probably just promote the Mew and Psi Power. That will probably win us the game. There's not a huge amount that our opponent can realistically do about that. Place a spell tag on our Giratina. We can Viridian away this Lunala Solgaleo. We don't need that. We don't want to draw into it. And then we're probably just going to Cynthia here to give ourselves the best chance of hitting whatever it is that we need next turn. There's not a huge amount of cards left in our deck. Everything that we need is in the active, but just in case, we can grab out something here. Psi Power is going to be the play. I don't think we're going to put down any of these Pokemon. Probably not going to be required. We'll just Psi Power. We'll put 20 damage onto that Inkay on the bench, and then 10 onto something else. Probably that Mew. Means that we can potentially use a second Giratina, which we just unprized here to take a knockout next turn if they do knock out our Mew. So there you go, we've wrapped up the game now. There's nothing that our opponent can do. Even if they do manage to knock out our Giratina, we guaranteed the game because we can use Psi Power to knock out the Mew. If they knock out the Mew, then we're guaranteed to win the game because we're going to use Giratina to attack. The worst case scenario for us is that they gust up a Malamar, but we've got energy in the deck. We've got retreat cost as well, so we should be fine. Unlikely to gust, and there is the concession, our opponent conceding. Yes, there is nothing that we can do about it. A good fun mirror, always good to watch. I love Malamar mirrors. It's probably one of the most skill-intensive games that you can play. Our opponent not playing an optimal list, but it's still pretty tight. Malamar Giratina, a fun deck to play, especially with all those spell tags. You get to place a lot of damage. If you're looking for a deck that isn't quite so expensive as some of the big ones, that utilizes some cool one-prize attackers, this is a good option. Got a near auto win against Blacephalon, so if you want to beat that, this will do the job. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy the content, then consider subscribing. Click the button that's just up here to do that. There are some videos that YouTube thinks you'll like over on this side of the screen, as well as a playlist for more lists in the Sun and Moon format for you to watch. Above us is our Sableize_YT Twitter and Facebook handle. You can follow us there, please do. Apart from that, that's all from us. We'll see you next time for more from the Sableize.